Hello and welcome to the podcast. This is Ron's Amazing Stories, where we play tales to take you away from today. On the podcast today, we have Jason Dowd.
Who is that?
Well, he's Jason. You know, the guy from the train?
Oh, yeah, that guy.
Jason and I talk about creepy pictures, past lives, and even get into some ghost hunting talk. Yeah. So, let's start the day with this amazing 5-minute mystery.
Another 5-minute mystery.
This 5-minute mystery is being brought to you by Immanuel Kant. He was the famous philosopher who once said, "Thoughts without content are empty. Intuitions without concepts are blind." How does this relate to our story? How does anything relate to a 5-minute mystery?
So you're making out all right, Molly, with your husband in the Army.
And why not, Inspector? Women are no weaklings. I can run this garage as good as any man now.
Next thing you know, the women will be taking over the police departments.
Yeah, just a minute. Hello, George's garage. Molly George speaking. Huh? Yeah, sure, I can handle it. Sure, be right over.
Someone broken down?
Worse than that, Inspector. A car just went over that 70-foot cliff at the Globe Tunnel.
The Globe Tunnel? Hey, that must be some wreck. I'll follow you out in my car, Molly. This might prove interesting.
Inspector, I've never been so scared in my life. My brother Lester was driving the car, and he didn't get out.
Hey, how about you men giving me some help here so I can get this car towed off the road?
Right with you, Molly.
One of you get in the tow truck here and pull forward, slow-like.
I'll do it.
Okay. Now, edge it forward.
Just a minute, Mills, until I release the emergency brake on this wreck. Oh, it's not the emergency brake. The gear shifts in reverse. Man. Okay.
There you are, Mrs. George.
How did your brother happen to run off this cliff, Mills?
We were having a little argument, Inspector, and Lester didn't see the curve until too late.
Must have been going pretty fast.
Well, we were going about 50 miles an hour. Lester yanked back on the emergency brake hard, but it didn't do any good.
The brake must have been defective. There's no skid marks.
I've got no faith in emergency brakes. Never use them. If Lester hadn't taken so much time with his, he could have jumped, too.
Then you jumped from this speeding car and didn't get hurt?
It was a miracle. When I saw Lester had lost control, I opened my door and jumped. The car ran along the edge of the embankment for about 20 feet and then fell over. It rolled and bounced down over those rocks. It was horrible.
Yes, I can see the tracks here along the edge of the cliff.
I'm taking it on in, Inspector, okay?
Sure, I'll see you later with the coroner.
If Lester hadn't trusted his brakes so much, he'd be here now. But no, the poor devil never even had a chance.
I'll say he didn't have a chance. Not when you, Mr. Mills, had murdered him.
Were you as fast as the inspector in seeing through Mill's story? We'll see in a moment. But first...
What a deep story. Women's equality, murder, and car carnage. Amazing. I believe Mill's story for the most part, but I did catch the flaw, and it might be enough to put this guy away. All they need is some motive. Immanuel Kant might have put it this way: you can't go forward if you're stuck in reverse.
Now, back to the story and its unusual solution.
Mills, the slip you made and the slip that'll send you to the lethal chamber was your habit of always parking a car in gear because of your fear of emergency brakes not holding. You'll remember I had to take your car out of reverse before it could be towed. Yet no one had been in the car since the accident. Mills, you killed your brother earlier, drove here to the cliff, parked the car on the edge just enough to make it off balance. Then to make sure the car didn't move until you were clear of it, you put the car in reverse, got out, wobbled the car until it toppled over the embankment.
That reasoning is stupid.
It was stupid of you, Mills, to forget that a car can't speed forward with the gears in reverse.
See how I did that? I used philosophy to solve a 5-minute mystery. I even think Emmanuel would be proud. The real question is this: how in the world did Mills push the car over the cliff with the car in reverse? It's a good thing we don't have to worry about stuff like that. This 5-minute mystery was brought to you by Emmanuel Kent. I have to say a big thank you. I received this email from iHeartRadio, which I was kind of shocked to get. It simply read, "Your podcast was selected to be in our 100 featured podcasts of the week." Now that might seem like a trivial thing, but when you consider that they claim to have 250,000 of them, it stops being a small thing. Thank you, iHeartRadio, for featuring our podcast last week. All I can say is, wow. Many of you have been asking if there are going to be more of the original 5-minute mysteries. The answer to that is yes, but it may not be until the next spooky season. I have not ruled out the idea of doing some sooner, and I do have some folks out there attempting to write new scripts. But for now, we have those from the 1940s to keep us happy. And now, this message from Audible. Today's podcast is being brought to you by Audible. Get a free audiobook and a 30-day free trial at audibletrial.com/Ron's Amazing Stories. They have over 180,000 titles to choose from for your iPhone, Android, computer, Kindle. Whatever you have, you can listen to Audible on it. So, what am I listening to right now? Believe it or not, I found a book that has been around since 1881. It is the original Treasure Island, narrated by Marty Ross. This is not just another reading of the Robert Louis Stevenson classic. Marty has taken this to a whole new level by adapting the story to an incredible radio-type drama feel. It is complete with character voiceovers and even a rendition of 16 Men on a Dead Man's Chest. You just gotta hear. If you're not familiar with the story, which I highly doubt, young innkeeper Jim Hawkins thought he had seen his fair share of characters until old sailor Billy Bones arrives at the inn. When Bones dies mysteriously, Jim stumbles upon a treasure map leading to a stash of buried pirates' gold. Arr, me bucko. The Disney version of this tale was my favorite until I heard this one. It truly is amazing. Now, you can have Treasure Island today. Here's what Audible has set up for us. Audible is offering a free audiobook and 30 days to give you the opportunity to check out their service. To download your free audiobook today, go to audibletrial.com/Ron's Amazing Stories. Again, that's audibletrial.com/Ron's Amazing Stories. If you do that, you can be sailing with Jim Hawkins today. Thank you, Audible.
ride that hopes to thrill you a little and chill you a little. Patience as we pull into Death Station.
All aboard!
Hey, Jason. Boy, it was easy getting on the train today.
It was a little too easy, I think.
Well, I got to tell you, the conductor isn't on this run. First time in a long time, but he's not on the run. He's not even in the train.
Really? Where is he?
Well, I did a little research and I checked the internet to find out if this was true, but he's at an open rally for the EFZ.
EFC. Doesn't ring a bell. What is that?
Well, EFZ. Does
Z,
that help?
yes. Yes, Z. No, not really, unfortunately.
That doesn't help you?
No.
Oh, well, they're big. They're really big, especially down in Florida, the swampy areas.
Really?
I'm surprised. Oh, yeah. Yeah, big time contingent there. It stands for Equality for Zombies.
Equality for Zombies.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Ron, zombies is an offensive term. They tend to prefer the term living impaired, but I don't know.
Well, you know, I didn't come up with the name. It's a rally for the EFZ, and I'm telling you, it's a real thing now with them zombies.
Wow, but they don't have these days.
Yeah, well, you know what they stand for. That is when they can stand. Some don't have legs.
That's true. Well, it took me a while to hit me square in between the eyes, but yes, that's true.
Yep.
That is true.
But in truth, they stand up for equal rights whenever they can.
Whenever they can, yes, that's true.
Anyway, so it should be a quiet trip. Nobody should be trying to feed you to kittens or put a Medusa head in your face or anything. You should be able to get through this one relatively uninjured.
That would be great if that could actually happen, because I'll tell you, the hospital's starting to wonder about me because they're like, you're here way too much.
They're not going to come after me with some kind of civil suit or something, are they? Because I had nothing to do with it.
No, I don't think it has anything to do with you, but it's kind of hard to sue a dead man.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's kind of like one of those catch-22s, but they're starting to look into it, I'm sure.
Well, I do know that there must have been some pressure put on the owner of this train because they're doing some refurbishing work back in the caboose area.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah.
Maybe it'll look better.
Yeah, well, I think they're trying to make it safer. So I know that, and even though in order to go back there, you got to wear safety gear, safety ropes, whole 9 yards if you're going to go in that back area. It's true.
Yeah, I saw that. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, so we'll have to remember that, by the way, when we go back there to let you off in Florida.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's true. So that could be, that you might be causing some notice here in the old dead train circuit.
Well, it's about dang time, because you know what? I like hanging with the dead. I don't want to be dead. And it's come close a couple times.
Yeah. Well, imagine when you jumped off the train and if it had been, sharks rather than whales.
Yeah.
That could have been bad. Do you even have sharks in Florida?
Oh, yeah. You wouldn't believe the sharks we have over here.
Well, anyway, how you been, Jason?
I'm doing pretty good, actually. I feel good. I've been busy, and that's always a good thing.
How are things at the radio station going? This is for me more than anybody.
Oh, yeah. Everything's going great. It's been fun growth. You get to hear different people, different views, and stuff like that. It's a lot of fun. That's important to be able to hear stuff like that.
How's Ron's Amazing Stories doing on the radio these days?
Oh, it's doing good. I mean, people love these old stories and stuff, and I love them. It really has a pretty decent listenership, just despite the fact that it's old stuff, and it's not necessarily old people listening. That's what's even better about it.
And that's how I created the podcast, with the idea of taking people back into that kind of flavor, letting them know. And lately, doing it with newer stuff, I've been getting a lot of compliments from the younger generation and the older generation, and that to me means tons. Well, Jason, I got some news.
Oh, really? What's that?
Well, my car went belly up.
Oh, no.
It did. It died. Well, it's still drivable. But
Flintstone style?
Well, almost. It has this thing that two mechanics and a friend of a mechanic cannot figure out what's wrong with it. And in fact, my mechanic, the guy I go to, spent 8 hours on it straight trying to figure out what was wrong with it. And he came back and said, "You don't owe me anything because I can't figure it out."
Hopefully it's nothing stupid like a battery or just out of gas.
Oh, no. And this has been going on now for a year or so. And I've been driving the car anyway, getting about 5 miles before I have to stop and let it take a break, and then I can go again. And guess what my brother did?
Wrecked it.
No, wrecking it would have helped too. But what he and his wife did was they got together and sent us, meaning my mother and I, enough money to buy a new car.
Oh, wow. That's so cool.
It was like Providence, because we went into the dealer, found the car we wanted with my sister's help. She's like the ultimate negotiator. And she got the car for exactly the amount he sent. And
wow.
Exactly the amount he sent. And a 1-year warranty on a used car that has 135,000 miles on it, and 2 new tires, and a year worth of maintenance, and 5 days to make sure it's what I want.
Wow, that's a deal.
Isn't that something? So do you mind if I take a minute publicly and thank my brother Jim and his wife Lynn for doing this for us?
You just did, but you have to do it.
Because it means so much, because I need a car to get around. I need a car to get my mom around. She's 93, you know. And this has been an absolute godsend. It's been a horror story, wondering if I could get to this spot or that spot, and those days are over.
Wow.
But it led to one problem.
What's that?
Family photos.
Oh, yeah. You know, I used to go around and take photos with your new car and brag to everybody. I guess you didn't have a chance to do that yet, have you?
Well, I did. I had to. And I don't know, you know, you didn't probably see it because you don't follow my sister, but they got plastered all over Facebook. This, the new car, my mom, me, and oh my goodness, it's a big deal on Facebook. But I'll tell you this, I'm mobile again, and I can go more than 5 miles.
Hey, that's going somewhere now. You're not in sloth mode anymore.
But so, you know, having to take a few family photos, hey, that's okay. Have you ever had an issue where family photos were kind of a thing?
No, because we didn't really take many. But I do have a cool story about where I found some photos that were pretty interesting, kind of creepy.
Kind of creepy? Well, you know what? This is supposed to be a death train, a horror express, and so far I think we haven't scared a soul. So let's see what you can do.
Well, I don't know. Maybe we did, because you're driving now and you're able to go more distances, so that might scare people. I don't know. I don't know how you drive, so. But
well, I'm like Aaron Rodgers. I've got that thing in my car that don't mess with my discount.
Oh, yes. Discount double check. Well, yeah, let me tell you this story because it's really kind of neat. Now, everybody knows that I have a house, or I used to have a house in my family that was made in the 1600s. And it sat up upon Hill Street in Bristol, Connecticut. And it was actually a very well-known historical landmark because George Washington had stayed there. It was a speakeasy. Well, not really a speakeasy, but it was more like it was an underground hall for people to come and dance to. It was a bed and breakfast and stuff like that throughout the 1800s. And my great-grandparents bought it in 1905. And it had been in our family from 1905 until 99? Yeah, wow. Something like that. So we've had it for almost 90. We had it for like almost 90 years. And when I was younger, I was still in high school before my great aunt had dementia and Alzheimer's disease. I went up there one time to spend a night with her. And the funny thing is that the way that she had this house, it was kind of creepy because it was Victorian all the way. In fact, if you walk into the kitchen, it looks like the 1940s. Late 30s, early 40s, and if you go into the living room where everybody else sat, and that's where we were going to sleep, it looked like the 1905 to 1920. So it gave it that. I mean, all the original furniture, all the original wallpaper, everything in this place was original. So it was a really, really weird sensation to be in that if you're not used to it.
Weird vibe.
So, yeah, so me and my cousin, my brother, and my other cousin, my cousins lived literally 4 houses down because my grandparents had some land that they gave them, and it was still part of that parcel that was up there. So they built a house there. So we walked down there. We had dinner and with my great aunt, and then before it was probably around 8 o'clock in the summertime, and we were getting ready to go to bed around 10. We set up everything. We got our special spots, and I loved being by the window because the window had amazing architecture to it, and I admired it. So that's where I wanted to sleep. I wanted to sleep by the window, and then everybody kind of like laid out next to each other in front of this old 1920s couch, which is really cool. And she didn't have TV there. She didn't believe in TV. She still was like basically stuck in the 1920s. So what we decided to do was we wanted to go down into the basement. My grand aunt did not really want us to go down in the basement because of the fact that the stairs are so steep and the roof is small, because back then people were, if they were 5'5", it was big,
Mm-hmm.
So we decided to go down there anyway. And I had read something that somewhere in these houses, they used to like throw coins in the walls and important stuff inside the walls or in the floorboards or something to protect them, especially from Indians and everything else that happened up there. So
Indians?
we went down. Yeah, Indians. So we went down inside the cellar, and it was a canning cellar. So I mean, they had the old bins where people would drive up with their carts and throw down coal or throw down wood and stuff into the basement. And when we were coming up, I noticed that there was a big crack in the floor, but it looked kind of artificial, like it was cut out. I said, let's take a look at this. So I got a flashlight and I shined down inside there to see what was in there. I mean, it was never open. I mean, it was probably been there for, maybe 60, 70 years. And when I looked in there, I saw that there was a book. I'm like, oh, look, we actually found something that belongs in the floors, like people try to protect. So I pulled it out. I pulled the stair up a little bit, nailed it back down after I got the book out, brought it up to my great aunt, and I said, have you ever seen this book? And it had like a little lock on it. And she goes, no, I've never seen anything like that before. She goes, where'd you find it? I said, in the stairs downstairs. So what we did was, she had some old tin snips, so we cut the lock of it off and opened it up to find that it was an old picture book. Now, this wasn't just any picture book. Basically, it was a bunch of people in caskets. And they were laid out.
Heard of this?
Yes, and they were laid out in front of the window. And guess where I was sleeping? Right in the spot where these caskets had been laid out for funerals. So it's really the closest thing that I ever been to sleeping in like a funeral, which is pretty interesting. So I hard to sleep that night, but we looked at the pictures and they were basically tintypes. We estimated them to be between 1820 to 1875. And ironically, the house didn't change. What we saw in that house looked identical to the way it was in these pictures. So my great aunt got freaked out by it, threw it away, and never saw him again, which was a real tragedy. But it kind of got my interest peaked, and that's kind of where I got really interested into funeral photography. And I did a little bit of research on it. I have collected funeral pictures, and basically what it's called is a memento mori, which is Latin, I believe, for a remembering of the dead. And it really did happen. A lot of Victorian pictures, in fact, most of the people in Victorian pictures on these carte de fils and tintypes generally are not alive. And I can tell you why if you want to know.
Well, Jason, I have to know why.
I thought you'd say that. So here's why. A lot of the times back in the 1800s and even the early 1900s, photography was extremely expensive. And you can see why. I mean, they used tin, they used all kinds of different types of chemicals that now, if we touched them, we'd probably end up dying from. With that being the case, that a lot of people didn't get a chance to take family photos. So unfortunately, by the time they could even do it, the person would pass away. And so they would take a picture of the deceased individual. Now, it was the job of the photographer to either make them look alive, and that's why you see a lot of these stands and these braces that they would use. Sometimes they put poles behind people so that way they look like they were standing up and animated. And a lot of times they're not. So you'll see some really creepy eyes on some of them. And what's really interesting about that is they used to paint those eyes on.
Wait a minute. You paint the eyes on?
Yeah, on the photo. Not on the person, but on the photo.
On the photo?
Yeah.
Oh, thank goodness.
So that's, or what they would do is they would put something underneath the eye to pin it open. So they, there was different ways of doing it, but the object was to make them not look as creepy as. So even though it kind of nowadays looks really creepy, back then it wasn't. So that's why you see some of these pictures with these kids and their siblings, and the siblings dead. So I mean, and you can tell that there's a look of weirdness on the child's face. But like I said, they only got a chance to do it once, so they unfortunately had to then spend the money to do the photos when the child passed away, because that was literally the only record of them physically with a photo or a painting or a drawing or anything, and that's all they had. So a lot of the times, if you see somebody laying there in a bed, 90% of the time one of them's deceased. If it's only one, then that one person's probably deceased. It was just easier to lay him down. Sometimes if you can look and you see some weird eyes, like it almost looks like they're just like looking through your soul, that's because they're painted on eyes. So that the person's dead, standing up with their eyes closed, and they painted the eyes on. And then sometimes you can even see a little bit of decay, depending on how fast the photographer could get there. Sometimes they would get there and decay had already started, because they didn't embalm. I mean, they did, but it was very, very expensive to do that. So a lot of times they just sat them there in their parlor, like where I was sleeping at my great aunt's house, and took pictures with the dead people there for a week after they were sitting there for a week. So there are signs that you can look for in these pictures, and I actually have a pretty good collection of them myself. And if you find them, they can be actually very, very expensive. If somebody doesn't know what they have, you can get them relatively inexpensive. But if they do have them and they do know what they are, they can go in the upwards of $100 to $200, depending on the picture and how well it was posed, propped, how clean the person looks, and everything else. Now, I've seen some absolutely horrifying looking ones, and it was his mother and son had passed away at the same time. It took the photographer 2 weeks to get out there because they didn't have one in the area. So by the time they got out there, you could already start to see some of the skin falling off and the eyes, all caved in, and you can just see that they were not. It kind of looked like Beetlejuice, the guy in Beetlejuice with the shrunken head.
Oh yeah.
So those are horrifying. But people say, why would you do this, even if you had your family member? Why would you want to remember them like that? And you got to remember, back in the Victorian days, we didn't think of death as taboo as we do now. Mm-hmm. It was actually a beautiful thing. And the idea of what they were able to do with these people after they died, it was for the person to grieve them, because they grieved for years. When people walked around in the 1800s in a black dress, that means they were grieving. It's not because it was a fashion statement like today. So there are other things that they did too, which is kind of interesting. Sometimes they would clip the hair, and you can find some amazing tapestry made with human hair from the people that they loved that passed away. And you can kind of see them behind glass, and they make them look like flowers and stuff. Sometimes they would have these pins that the widow would wear with the hair of their deceased loved. So they did a lot of really what we would call taboo practices for death back in the early 1900s into the 1800s. But now it's actually considered in some states a crime to take a picture of a body.
It is.
Even if it's your own family member, to take a picture at the cemetery is considered illegal, which is kind of interesting because you wouldn't think of it to be like that. I look at it as a form of art. It's a beautiful form of art when you really think about it, because that person meant so much to somebody that they wanted to immortalize them, even if they didn't get a chance to do it while they were alive.
Well, that's some incredible stuff. A few weeks ago, we had Sylvia on, and she was talking about spirit photography and how in the mid to late 1800s, that was a big deal, where they would go to these, some of them shysters, some of them legitimate mediums, and have their pictures taken with the hopes that their loved one would somehow appear in ghost form on these photos. One of the most famous being Mary Lincoln, with Lincoln at her shoulder. And it's hard to explain some of them are obviously fakes, but it kind of goes along with the whole thing. So I'm not surprised by what you're saying at all, that people would want the opportunity to be able to look back and say, this was my uncle or my mother or my father or my baby daughter, whatever. But it sure grosses me out.
It does. But if you look at it this way, we're so used to having photos because it's just so readily available, from phones to even in the 1950s, we had affordable cameras. But you're looking back in the 1920s and 1900s and early 1800s and all throughout the 1800s, these cameras would range between $2,000 to $3,000. Now, that doesn't sound like much today because we can get pretty much a DLR camera for that. But you got to remember, back then, you could live a week for 2 to 3 weeks off of $1. So you're looking at hundreds, probably what we would consider up in the range of $20,000 to $30,000 for us today. And you have to have the skill to do it. So when we leave and we forget to take a picture, we kind of get bummed out about it. But imagine knowing that the technology was there and you never got a chance to take a picture of your loved one before they passed away, and there's nothing left for you to do. They are gone. So that would break my heart probably more than having a photo of them posed like they were alive.
I can understand one thing of doing it then, because I do know a little tiny bit about photography back in those days. And it was the flash bulbs alone were kind of a hit or miss type thing. They basically, didn't they just light something on fire with a match and go poof?
It was like a dust, like a gunpowder type thing.
And so, and you had to stand very still. You couldn't move. And so it makes a lot of sense, but it doesn't change the creep factor of that. Propping them up. I mean, how does the dead person feel about it if they're hanging around their corpse watching all this stuff? I don't know. It's creepy, and I think it's interesting what you brought us today. That's pretty cool stuff.
I actually have a photo I can take a picture of that shows a person being propped up with a stand that held them around their neck like a doll did from behind, but they actually show a picture of it. You don't ever get to really see those pictures. So if you would like, I can send you guys one of those so you can kind of see what it looks like.
Yeah, let's get those in the show notes this time so people can see what we're talking about. Maybe I'll try to find some examples too on the internet with some links so people can see. We did that with the spirit photography. We linked up to some of those photos. So if you want to go back to that episode, and I don't remember off the top of my head what it was, but you can go back and look at those spirit photos too from the 1800s. Crazy stuff.
Yes, it is.
All right, well, let me just say I did again what I did last time because I didn't have any questions for us, but we got people telling us what they want to ask us now on Twitter and Instagram, so we have some questions.
Yep, we're moving in the 20th century now, right?
Yeah, email is, I guess, not as big a deal as it used to be back in the day, but we have some Twitter requests for some things to talk about. So what do you say we talk about those now?
Let's do it. Okay, we got one. His name is @Dabberslaw. And he says, guys, I think that ghosts are a waste of time. All I ever see is junk and made up scams. I like Ron's idea that there is a spiritual world, but coming back as a ghost is absurd.
Okay. Well, I'm not going to disagree with him. I don't know how you feel about ghost shows. There have been a couple that I have a hard time of explaining, but a lot of them I think are made up. I think that they're just trash TV in some ways. And I don't necessarily believe everything I see. Now, I'm not stamping them all bad, so don't send me emails. But I am saying that a lot of them do seem like junk and made-up scams. I'm in agreement with this.
We have another one similar to that, and I will tell you both Dabberslaw and the other one what I think after I read them both, because they both kind of tie into each other. And I will also answer this other one in my own opinion when we get back to that one, so that way I can kind of answer them both together, if that makes sense.
Well, let's do them out of order. Who says we have to do them 1, 2, 3?
Yeah, let's do it. Okay, so the other one comes from Robert Tensler. It says, I do have a question. I have attempted to ghost hunt. I have yet to find any evidence and have given it up. How do they do it so often on television shows? It drives me crazy. I so want to have an experience. Okay.
And I don't blame him.
I don't blame him either. Now, here's the thing. Think about this. Television is meant to be entertainment. I have talked to a lot of reality television people, and not only just in the ghost field, but in like Real Housewives style type of shows. They are all scripted. They are all made up, and they are paid to act a little bit more to give you the drama that you need. When TAP's Ghost Hunters first came on, I think it was 2005, 6, something like that.
Yeah.
99.9% of the time, they never found anything. They had some weird stuff, but they never found anything. The problem with it is that the ratings started going down the tubes because people wanted to see ghosts. Now, here's the thing. You can't just make a ghost appear on cue. It almost never happens. In fact, a real investigator will probably go out and can investigate the same house maybe 20 times before they can actually find something credible that says, okay, this is something that we can use. So if you're a ghost hunter, you have to just keep doing it for the love that you're eventually going to capture that holy grail. Same thing with Sasquatch. People go out there and see them, but I have yet to see any photos, telltale photos of them being out there. And when they are, it kind of looks like they were a little doctored up, and UFOs are kind of the same way. So you got to look at it at that same point. But getting back to the television shows, they actually caught the TAPS ghost hunters lifting a table at the Stanley Hotel in Colorado right on cue to make it look like there was something happening. And it kind of almost put them into a discrediting type of thing. There's another one too. I'm trying to remember what it was, but I think it's called Paranormal Investigator or Paranormal Activity, something like that, where they used to go and get locked in these buildings, and they would be there all night long, and all they did was just night vision throughout the entire thing. Almost every time something happened. But the thing about it is, there's people that have worked there that have gone there for weeks and months at a time, and nothing happens, and then all of a sudden something will happen. So a lot of this stuff is made up for your entertainment, otherwise you won't watch because it's going to get boring. I actually appreciated it more when they didn't find something, because to me, that was more realistic to how things work. But because they have to fit in with the network's abilities to entertain you and give you what you're looking for. I mean, you're tuning in to see the housewives to watch them fight over each other, but outside they really aren't like that in most cases. Same thing here with ghosts. You want to see a ghost. If you don't see a ghost, you're not going to watch anymore. So that's why they continue to push that to the limit. So you're not wrong. You probably won't see much, and that's okay, Robert. If you're passionate about it and you really want to find it, keep doing it. You'll eventually catch something. It's just a matter of how sensitive your equipment is too. And as Dabber saw, yes, I do believe that a lot of this stuff is made up and junk on television, but I've physically seen ghosts myself. I have physically had interactions with ghosts myself, so I cannot discredit that they don't exist. Otherwise, something, if it isn't a ghost, had an interaction with me, and I need to know what that is. But I have had demonic entities attack me. I have been scratched. I have been thrown. I have had stuff thrown across the room at me. That just doesn't happen by itself. Something has to force that book to fly at me or stuff like that. And something has to physically scratch me, and I don't have nails to scratch myself. So I cannot say that they don't exist, and I cannot say that everybody that dies comes back either. There could be a reason why somebody's here. I've heard a lot of things like if you get in a car accident and you weren't slowly dying and being prepared for death, that you don't really realize that you're dead and you don't go to the other side, whatever that may be. You have unfinished business. I've heard that theory. I've heard a lot of other things too, that people are just attached to something here and they don't want to give it up. I don't know why they'd be here. I don't know if they are ghosts. They could be demons. I don't know what they are.
Tricksters.
But I truly are tricksters. But there's absolutely something here that I can say because I've had an interaction with it. Now, as far as catching on camera, it may never happen, but that doesn't mean that they don't exist either.
Well, let me just say on this subject that, and maybe this will clarify where I'm at. I believe in a spiritual world. There is no way that doesn't exist for me. It's there. I believe it. I can feel it at times. I know that is part of all of our lives. And if that's true, then if the veil is thin, certain times, whatever reasons, too much water, too much lime, too much electricity, whatever it is, why can't it spill over into our world? But it seems to me it would be so rare and so hard to capture. It's like trying to capture, I don't know, the death of a firefly. Have you ever seen one other than when you slapped it in your hands? I mean, it's just, you got to be there at the right moment, at the right time, with the right equipment and it has to be just a synchronicity of things that have to happen to make it real. That's why I tell stories. Jason, that's the reason, because people can tell me what they saw and what they see and how they feel and what they do and what happened. And all of these things are real to them because they experienced it. You don't have to be there. And that's why stories are so powerful. And that's why we need to share our stories about our adventures, our stories about our encounters. That's why we're here. And that's why Ron's Amazing Stories exists.
And it gives you the opportunity to either discredit them or accept them. And I love that ability to be able to have and make up your own decision on something.
Right. Well, I'm going to say public. I would never discredit anyone for their stories. All stories are welcome, but do I believe them all? No. I'm sorry. But that is, like you said, a personal choice. I have to decide how I feel about this story or how I feel about what they're saying. But to capture a ghost on television week in, week out is absurd. With Dabershaw, we're on the same page.
Now, with the modern technology, one of the things that you can kind of see something that is a little bit more indisputable is the thermal cameras, because they pick up heat sensory, and that's what it kind of goes by. And I've actually seen people, there's two people in a room, you see them with the regular camera, and all of a sudden here comes this other person out of nowhere, and it comes in and goes away right quick. But you can see that there's nobody there.
Okay, so, but again, right time, right place, right?
Exactly. So if you want to get a better shot or have a better chance of catching a photo of a ghost, I would say use thermal cameras. Or infrared cameras or something, because it literally goes beyond your skin and solid material, and it picks up energy and temperatures. And that can give you something a little bit better, maybe.
I've talked to you, and I've talked to a lot of ghost hunters on this show, and one of the things that has been constant is research.
Yes.
Know where you're going so that you know how to recognize what you're looking at when you do finally see it. Because if you're just going to a cemetery and hoping to catch a dead person, well, how do you know that there's any there? But you go to a place where you know people have experienced things. You know that there's a chance. Don't go to your McDonald's because you think it looks spooky.
Right. Well, Walmart has some walking zombies at nighttime, too. So, I mean, you could probably get some weird stuff there. But
we're on Black Friday.
But regardless, you are right. Go to the places that you hear stories about. And sometimes you can go to places that you don't. Sometimes it's fun just to see if you can possibly experience something there, because you never know. You never know where these things pop up. You don't know whatever happened to this one field back in the days. You just don't know. So it's fun sometimes to even go to that. But this is where I get really upset with people with orbs, because, like I said, orbs can be easily debunked by photos. You just got to know how an orb comes. And if you see how an orb comes, of course, it's going to be debunked. And people don't want to hear that. Like, there's a house here in Brooksville. It's an old house, and they actually caught a picture of Colonel Sanders. It looks just like Colonel Sanders, but that happens to be the guy. It looks identical to the guy that used to live there in the 1800s. And that's hard to debunk. Now, the thing about it is that you go outside and then take a picture of the outside and you'll see all these orbs. But when you go outside, guess what you're standing on and taking pictures of at nighttime with the lights coming in?
Well, bugs.
Sand.
Oh, sand. Okay.
Yeah. Cars are coming.
Oh, that makes sense
town.
in Florida.
Yes. So it's all sand. So, I mean, that stuff gets kicked off into the air. What is sand made of? Silica. Those are little reflective particles that can fly because they're too light. So you take a picture of it with your camera and your flash on, and all of a sudden you look up and there's 5 million ghosts right there. If you believe that's, and I keep telling people that's not a ghost. You don't understand. There's a lot of people that have been here over these years. So you mean to tell me that everybody that has ever stepped foot in Brooksville, Tampa, and everything else are here tonight? Come on. So, this is why you got to know what you're looking for. But if you're going to look for a ghost, I don't care where you are or how much you know, never go into a place expecting to see something. Always go in there expecting to disprove it. Because if you go in there with the expectation that you are going to see some ghosts, you're going to have some interaction, and everything's going to be just so cool, you're going to be sadly mistaken a lot of times, and that's where you get frustrated. So always go in there thinking that there is no ghost and try to prove that there is one.
I love that. I think you said it as well as anybody can. And so, closing on Dabershaw and Robert Tensler, you guys have these are great questions, and
they were.
I appreciate the whole idea of them, and thank you for sending them in. Good stuff.
Yes. And I love that because they kind of had a different view of it, but yet the same type of style of what they're trying to get at. So I love it.
Well, Robert seems open, and Dabershaw seems like no, not so much. Right. All right. Well, we got one more. I know for a fact. So we skipped him.
We skipped him, but only because the fact that his is a little bit different than everybody else's. But his name is James Shaw. He goes, I love art and believe that skills of the past can be brought forward into the future. Do you think that this proves the theory of past life has to be true?
Wow. Well, I'm going to take a stab at that and say that past lives have always been something that I'm not too sure about. And by that I mean, I don't see the logic of it, of having to relive your life over and over again in different bodies to learn a lesson, or as some people believe, or to progress through this chain of being eventually able to get to the end, whatever that is. I'm not so sure, but there are some things I can explain, like someone who has the ability to paint just like Van Gogh, for example, and all of a sudden be able to recreate his work so perfectly. So can skills be passed along? I think so, especially into the future. But is it by study or is it by some magical means? That I can't answer.
Well, I agree with you in a lot of that, because I can't necessarily prove that past lives happen, and they could. I'm never going to rule that out until I know for sure that it doesn't. But like you said, get some people that are just amazing, like Mozart. At the age of 4, he wrote his first grand concerto. It's like, wow, how did he even grasp the concept of music at that age? That would almost prove that somebody came back from the grave. But I truly believe that we are born with natural talent, and some things are just so natural to us that we don't need to study it. That doesn't mean that it was necessarily mean that it's from a past life where we learned it and grew. Now, on the other hand, with art, you got to realize that really art hasn't changed all that much. The only difference is that we've had newer stuff to go along with it, so it wasn't so dang hard to do. But the techniques are almost the same, just depending on how you want to paint it. Monet had a different style than Van Gogh did. Van Gogh had a different style than Dali. But yet they all came away with their own interpretation. And that's really what art is. So it's something that we have that's learned. And if you have that passion inside of you, it comes out easier than somebody that you're trying to teach that can't do anything. They're like, oh, I can't even draw a stick figure. And you're going to try to force that into them and make them paint a Van Gogh. It's going to be impossible. And I teach this in my radio show about people that want to become an actor, people that want to become things like an artist, is that you have to have the passion and inspiration behind you, because if you don't, those are the magic keys to any art that's out there. If you don't have that, you're not going to be able to do it as successfully as you want to. It becomes a chore.
And I think you're saying and I believe the question was, can skills of the past be brought forward into the future?
Yes.
And I think that the answer to that is 100% yes. But does it prove past life to be true? No, I don't think so. Because you can study and become as good as a Monet or a Van Gogh or whoever you want to match. You still have to do the due diligence of understanding how to do it. Now, that does not explain like the prodigies,
right?
The people that are born with it. And something like that would lead more towards past life than just hard study and learning.
Exactly. But there are some people that are just born with that ability to do that. For us, we have to learn it, so we don't quite comprehend how they were able to do that. I mean, look at Michael Jackson. I'm sorry. The man could literally do nothing else in life but sing. He just did not know anything else in life but singing. And he did that since a very, very young age. And he never took any vocal lessons. He didn't do any of that stuff. It just came naturally, and look what he became. But that's because that's all he was meant to do, and that's maybe where his brain was wired to, and it made sense to him. So for us to be able to figure out how we could sing like that, we have to go through classes. But for him, it was just second nature. I mean, I truly believe that we do have a second nature, that we could just pick up what we want to do sometimes, and it's so easy. And for some people, it's a little harder. But that doesn't mean that it's a past life. It just means that some people it comes naturally to, some people it doesn't.
Well, you failed to mention that he had the ability to dance like nobody else could dance.
That's true. That is true.
And that, my friend, is something pretty special as well. Well, I think we had 3 great questions. And again, I want to thank all 3 of you. And I'll say you again, Daberslaw, James Shaw, and Robert Tensler. Thank you guys for taking part in the show today. You were fantastic. Jason, tell us about Gladys Goodies. What do we got?
Oh, I got some cool news for you guys, and I haven't told it to anybody on any radio station or any podcast or anything yet. So I have my logo trademarked, and it took me less than a year to do it. I did it on my first show. So Gladys Goodies is now an official brand. It is a official trademark, and I am so excited about it. And it was an experience that I was nervous about. I was scared about doing it, but it came back, and I have something that I never thought I could. And I'm just so thankful for that. And I've been having a lot of requests for cat treats. So I have made
I'll be your number one fan.
I came up with a couple of cat treats. So one of them is going to be more of a meat variety from like the farms, and some of them is going to be fish. So I have right now Squeaks Treats, Seafood Melody, and Boots Bites. It's a meat melody, but they're broken into little itty bitty pieces for the cats to love, because cats don't like big things to eat. No. And they smell so amazing. I mean, it's got a very strong odor, which is quality. And the cats seem to love it. I have tried it on all the neighborhood cats around here. And believe it or not, they have completely engulfed them. So I think we have another winner, and I think people are going to really enjoy that as well. So those are the two newest things that I have coming out. And I cannot go through the season without saying this. This is the season. Dump and redo. And this is what happens when people have an old dog. They decide they want to have a puppy for Christmas. So they take their old dog and throw him in a shelter. The dog is completely confused and has no idea what the hell's going on and why they just got abandoned. And then these people bring home a brand new puppy. That completely breaks my heart.
Oh, that's crazy.
And unfortunately, the shelters, I couldn't do it either. This is a commitment for life. And I see these older dogs, and you got to remember, once they're over 10 years old, 90% of them that hit a shelter are euthanized within a week because nobody wants an old dog. So really think about this. This dog, you became their life, and now you just abandon them for a puppy. And unfortunately, the puppy's going to face the same thing eventually when they get too old. Please, people, don't give puppies and dogs as gifts. And if you are going to get a dog, please consider, or a cat too, it doesn't really matter what it is, be prepared to have the cat or the dog for life. I don't want to see them in shelters. It breaks my heart to see this. I'm angry enough that I almost want to say they don't deserve another animal.
I agree with that. Hey, let me take that a little further, because I've had some contact with our local Humane Society here, and they are saying, hey, adopt an old pet.
Ours is too. I cannot stress it enough. So, and you know what? It's actually cheaper to adopt an older pet. You just never know what you're going to have with a dog. So these dogs will change your life, but you change them just as much. So adopt an older dog.
Okay, so I have a question for you then. So now that you've gone into the realm of cat treats, am I eligible for a 20% discount too?
You know you are.
So do I use RONS?
Yep.
What's the full way we can go see Gladys Treats?
Gladys
Goodies. Sorry.
.com. GladysGoodies.com is the best way to go check it out. It's GLADYSGOODIES. And use Ron's for your 20% discount.
And that includes Ron, right?
That does include you. You are absolutely able to take a part of that, and I have no problem with it.
Well, I will go to the site, and you finally gave me a reason to come buy something at your site. So look for a sale, at least from Ron for his kitty.
Okay.
And I will use Ron's. That is RONS.
And anybody that's listening to this, do it. Save yourself some money. I mean, I try to make them very inexpensive as much as I can anyways, but save yourself some money. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that.
Nope. Well, Jason, I have some bad news.
I know it's time to go, isn't it?
It is. I just even had a little warning from the Zoom folks here that we've been talking a long time. So I'm thinking we got to get you into that, caboose. And you know that we got to harness up and go back and, look at it this way. We'll see what they're doing back there anyway.
Yeah, let's go check out the progress.
All right. Well, let's head back. Well, Jason, it's kind of windy and loud back here. It looks like they're repaneling the whole thing. It's wild.
It does. It's a little overwhelming. You know, small space, lots of noise, but you know what? You got to do it. So.
Well, I told you before I had some bad news, and I tried to make it that it was the fact that they were doing this work. That's not the bad news.
What's the bad news then?
Well, without the conductor here, they're not going to stop the train where we want. They're not even going to slow down. It's just a matter of shoving you out the door, my friend.
Well, not the first time, but hopefully nothing will go wrong this time.
Oh, no. Are you ready? Here you go. I'm going to push you out. Bye.
Oh, I think I made it this time.
Maybe I should have taken off the harness.
Horror Express is brought to you by Gladys Goodies. Good treats for your hellhounds to eat.
That completes episode number 414. I hope you enjoyed it. I want to thank Dabber Slaw, James Shaw, and Robert Tensler for their questions today. If you want to follow the podcast or the blog, just head to ronsamazingstories.com. There you will find an amazing number of links that should fit every need. Do you want to help the show? The best thing you can do is to tell your friends all about it. And please leave reviews or feedback wherever you listen. This is what makes podcasts grow. Thank you for listening, and I hope you come again to find out what are Ron's amazing stories.